Okay, no, like, let's have this conversation, because, like, as a fat femme who has been out most of my life, I'm turning 30 in January, and I came out around 16, 17, tried to come out whenever I was, like, 12, because I knew, and my mom freaked the out, so went back into the closet for a few more years, but, I'm just gonna say this, and it's probably gonna piss off a few people, but a lot of queer people mirror how cis men treat fat femmes in the queer community, and y'all don't want to work through your fat phobia, and matter of fact, y'all will deny it and treat us like shit, because I've had it happen multiple times, multiple motherfucking times, and I know I'm not the only one.
And here we have a fatphobe in their natural habitat, the comments of a happy fat person. Hey bestie, I just want to let you know that you're being really self-absorbed and fatphobic right now, and let's get into it. You are absolutely right. We did not get or stay fat simply by breathing air. Let's talk about some of the ways somebody can be fat or get fat, like genetics, medicine, being differently bodied, trauma, both emotional and physical, eating disorders that we've developed because we have a society that keeps pushing this narrative, and yes, food, and a combination of a sedentary lifestyle. Look, I'm very happy for you that you have a goal that you can achieve, but it is so self-absorbed to think that your experience with your body, with your weight, is universal and should be applied to every single situation. Every single fatphobe who has commented, stitched, duetted, whatever, has said that I have given up. I have become health-oriented, not weight-oriented. So I wish you the best of luck on your health journey, and I hope that a part of that is reevaluating these archaic notions as to what is healthy.
I've seen a lot of people talking about Alicia's video about American Eagle and how they've stopped carrying sizes 20 and above in store. And I think that this is an important time to remind folks that some fat people never got a chance to shop at American Eagle. Like, they ended at like a 24, 26, and that's not where the fat spectrum ends. This isn't new either. Like, fat people have continued to feel gatekept from fashion in many different ways, and I think smaller fats are starting to realize how frustrating that's been, because even though you can purchase something up to a 3X, not everybody can. And what is fat liberation if it's not for all of us?
Hey bestie! You're wrong. I think it's time for another adult pre-K lesson. What do you think? All right, turn your listening ears on. Zoop, catch a bubble in your mouth. Good job. Okay, here's the thing. Having a preference is something like, I'm looking for a partner who likes kayaking, or wakes up early in the morning, or loves pizza. But when your preferences exclude an entire group of marginalized people, that's problematic. Okay, that's not nice. That's not a preference. If you lump all fat people in one group together as though they are not very different individuals, that's fatphobic. Just like lumping all black people in one group and saying, I don't like black people, is racist. And lumping all disabled people in one group and saying, I don't think people in wheelchairs are hot, is ableist. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Okay, so I have a TikTok going viral about the fact that there's a shit ton of fat phobia within the queer community, as if a fat femme like me wouldn't know what it's like to experience that. But there's a handful of comments of people going, it's just a preference, stop playing a victim. I'm not playing a victim whenever I'm quite literally calling out the fact that you are fat phobic. No one's playing a victim whenever you're calling out racism. No one's playing a victim whenever you're calling out homophobia. No one's playing a victim whenever they're calling out transphobia. And for the people who keep saying it's a preference, I need you to put your critical thinking caps on. Where did those preferences come from? I'll give you a minute. Have you Google? It's free. Takes like 3 clicks. I'm gonna go ahead and say systemic oppression and the beauty standards, Western beauty standards, specifically being rooted in white, skinny, cis, able bodies. Maybe let's unpack that instead of just being like, it's just a preference. It makes me uncomfortable for you to call me out on my fat phobia because I might be a bad person. You know what makes you a bad person? Denying that it fucking exists and not willing to put in the fucking work to unpack your bullshit.
So, in one of my other videos, I used the term small fat. I got a lot of responses to that, and I realized that it's probably because most people haven't heard that term before. So, as we all know, fatness exists on a spectrum. So, fat people have created terminology that will help explain the different parts of the spectrum a little bit better. This is a little easy chart made by fatlip.ash on Instagram. A small fat is a 1 to 2x, or lower than an 18, basically. So a small fat is a 1 to 2x typically, and they're an 18 or lower, usually between a 14 and an 18. And because these people are the smallest, they're typically the more acceptable type of fat. They're also usually the ones at the forefront of the body positivity or fat liberation movement, because the smaller you are, the more privilege you have over the people who are larger than you. Then it goes mid-fat, which is a 2 to 3x, which is usually the highest sizes that most mainstream brands carry in a plus size. I'm really sorry, but I have to make a part 2 to explain the rest. We're talking about the next group, which is the super fats, or me. Being a super fat means that you are between a 4x and a 5x, or a 26 to a 32. So being in this range means you are typically the highest size that brands have to offer. I am the highest size in ModCloth and Eloquii and Target, and I exist in the highest section in Torrid as well. And then there's the infinity fat, and that is people who are a 6x or higher and higher than a 34. It's way harder for people in this category to find clothing, and if they don't fit in a Torrid 6, most of the time they have to have their clothes custom made, or, you know, small businesses and stuff, but it's a lot more difficult, and all of the issues that people who are smaller than them face, it's even worse for them. The doctors not listening, the getting passed up for jobs, the not being able to shop, everything is more difficult the larger you are.
Okay, let's talk about how body size affects oppression. There are a lot of other factors that affect how fat people experience oppression, but right now we're talking about body size. I will address the other ones in future videos. Fatness exists on a spectrum, and there are people who experience fat oppression who exist across a very wide range of sizes. And the pattern that most people recognize is that as body size increases, so does the frequency and severity of the oppression that person experiences. In social justice spaces, we need to be centering the people who experience the most oppression. And while we don't really have that many people who practice true fat liberation, let's take a look at body positivity. If you know anything about mainstream body positivity, it is that it typically centers thin people or fat people on the smaller side of the fatness spectrum, because it's thought that they represent what's considered an acceptable version of fatness. I'm actually a good example of this, and I can explain more in part 2.
Vocabulary that I use. And now I didn't know what my body type was.
Just to restate, she's asking about what kind of terminology she should use to reference herself as a person who could be considered small fat, mid-size, or at the top end of straight sizes. Personally, and what I'm seeing from a lot of other body positivity creators, is just that we have a lot of frustration with the term mid-size. Activists have come up with terminology like small fat to use when we're having these discussions. And when people started popularizing the term mid-size, it kind of presented itself in one of 2 ways. Either straight-size people using it to distance themselves from thin privilege, and small fat people using it to distance themselves from fatness, both of which are fatphobic. I also understand if people struggle to identify with the word fat because it has had such negative connotations for so long. Reclamation can be hard for some. You get to pick the terminology you use, but this is the scale and the terms that many activists are encouraging us to use. So pause to read.
Hi, I'm Jess, and I woke up to some fatphobic comments, so let's talk about them. Starting at the bottom on my fat anime video. People in Japan actually have common sense and don't promote obesity, unlike the US. That's why Japanese people are living longer. And then followed up with, but y'all can keep thinking they're fatphobic, whatever that means. Then they jump to a different video, a video talking about how you can be body positive and still choose to lose weight. It's healthy to be fat phobic. Why would anyone want to be morbidly obese? Avoiding becoming fat is like avoiding cigarettes or drugs. Nothing wrong with being chubby or overwrought. Obesity isn't okay though. And you blocked. But let's review. You don't understand fatphobia, but you're still confident enough to say that it's healthy. Also, I know it's unimportant, but I never became fat. I was born fat. I have always been fat. And at one point, I even abused cigarettes to try to not be fat. Fatphobia kills.